Welcome to Spotlight. There's a new potent partnership in town. It's between community colleges and local nonprofit-based organizations. Joining me today is Maureen Conway, Executive Director of the Economic Opportunities Program at the Aspen Institute. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you, Jodie.
And in addition, we're also joined today by Sharon LeGrande. Sharon is the Director of the Northern Virginia Family Service Workforce Development Programs. Welcome, Sharon. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, Jodie.
You know, my first question, Maureen, is could you give us a brief snapshot of this initiative you have underway, Courses to Employment? What's that project all about?
Sure. Courses to Employment has been a 3-year investigation of these community college nonprofit partnerships. We were really interested in understanding how these partnerships work, the range of things that they do. So we selected 6 different partnerships from different communities across the country. They work in different industries, they work with different kinds of populations, and really do a wide range of different things. And we followed them very closely. We looked at the outcomes that they achieved for their participants. We looked at the kinds of resources that they rely upon, and we looked at how they actually work, who does what in these partnerships. And why we looked at them was because we really felt that these partnerships were incredibly important in terms of providing opportunity to low-income adults in today's economy. People have really recognized the importance of skills to get better jobs, and the importance of community colleges as a source of those skills has really been elevated in terms of importance, but people are really struggling to succeed in colleges. And by combining the resources of a nonprofit and the community colleges, it raises the chances of success. And so that was what we're really interested in exploring, is how that can happen and how that can happen in more communities.
Well, then, play that out a little bit more. How is, in fact, the partnership value added for the student?
Well, for the student, particularly for the kinds of students we're talking about who maybe are first-generation students, who are students who also work and have families to take care of, for these students, they really need skills, but they need to be able to go through an education program, kind of fast, right? They don't want to get lost in registration and financial aid and a lot of the bureaucratic systems that are part of running a large institution like a community college. Similarly, they need some help sometimes in sort of figuring out, how do I keep working and go to school? How do I take care of my kids and go to school? And then, colleges are experts in education and in providing the skills, but they don't necessarily help people navigate the labor market and translate those skills into jobs once people have finished their degrees. And so these are the kinds of services that the nonprofit provide around that education experience to make sure that that education experience is a success.
So Sharon, tell us about the students who are coming through your door and getting these wraparound services. What do you know about them? What kinds of barriers do they face?
So our typical student is probably mid to late 30s. And so they've already may have been in the workforce, but may have been in low-end paying jobs, retail clerks, CNAs, certified nurses assistants. And so in working these cab drivers, things like that, working the jobs that, because they've come to this country, and many of them are legal immigrants. They may have been here for maybe 3 or 5 years and have gotten stuck in those low-end jobs. And so they're looking to advance their skills. They may have education from previous countries where they lived, but they can't translate those skills here. Mm-hmm. And so they're looking for a short-term job training, something that's going to put them back on the path to get that better job.
And your partnership was recently reported in the New York Times, and you all were singled out for being a successful venture. Could you briefly highlight some of the ways in which you've been able to make accomplishments with this population?
Sure. So we start with the students. The college relationship is not at the forefront of where we start with a student. A student comes in and they come in and they've identified themselves. They've self-referred or been self-referred by an agency, and they come in and they're like, we want job training skills. And so we start with an intake process where we're screening them to become part of the training class. They have to test, they go through an eligibility criteria process. Once they've been accepted into the cycle, then we start almost a transformational process with them. some of them have come in. Obviously, we've set up a system where they are coming into a class to get job training skills, but they also need to reflect the outward appearance of the working professional. And so we, from head to toe, literally, change their dress, teach them skills to how do you act in a professional setting, along with the hard skills that we're giving them in terms of the curriculum, computer skills, professional development workshops, business math, business English, the entire curriculum. But it goes along with changing their image of how they see themselves. They no longer, at the end of it, no longer see themselves as, you know, I can't do this, or I can't accomplish this, or I can't get a better job. Now it's, I can do this. I can see myself as a working professional, and many of them end up in the corporate setting or with a medical setting, if it's their preference, and they are now a very different person from the person that we got at the beginning of the program.
How long is the program?
It's 6 months long, 25 weeks, and it includes a 17-week core curriculum model and a 3-week internship period, and then a getting and keeping it, what we call a getting and keeping a job, which is really intensive job development at the end.
So before we talk about the business partnership aspect of this effort, which I know is very key, you're doing transformational work as you described it, and are the students yet students at Nova, or are they entirely with you during this 26-week period except for the internship?
Well, that's the beauty of the program, I think, is that while they're enrolled at Training Futures, they're also dually enrolled at Nova.
But I think helping students think about themselves as, you know, as professionals, as being able to succeed in college and succeed in the workplace is something that all the nonprofit partners work on in different ways with their students so that they can succeed both in the college and in work. So how that shapes out, other programs do it a little bit differently by trying to do special sessions around being in a community college setting. So they have different ways of approaching it, but they all really address this issue of people rethinking what is possible for me.
What are some of the basic tips, basic lessons about building those partnerships so that they become effective in a variety of ways, whether it's internship or otherwise?
Well, so I think that there's a variety of ways that programs think about working with business, and this is one of the interesting things that we've seen in these partnerships is how they approach working with their business community. And I think, you know, what Sharon said is that they have employers that they've been working with for years and years, but they also have new ones every year. And I think sort of building those networks take some time to build, but continuing to sort of maintain the relationships you have and using those relationships to develop even more relationships, I think has been one of the key things of success. I think also these programs follow up and they find out how are our students doing and are you happy with them, and you know, just provide good business service in that sense, right? So, you know, knowing your businesses and knowing what they want and being able to deliver on that, I think is a key part of it. And we were interested also in this because community colleges have relationships with businesses and the nonprofits have relationships with businesses, and we thought, I wonder if they end up stepping on each other's toes a little bit to some degree, right? I mean, you know, they're the same businesses. They sit on your curriculum advisory committee over here at the college, and you're working with them. But, you know, the truth is that they actually don't, because the colleges engage them in very different ways and often at different levels. So the colleges are talking to them about, you know, being on their curriculum advisory committee and what are the specific skills and how do we translate that into credit and non-credit courses and think about how that, you know, makes up into a degree and so on and so forth. And the nonprofit is talking to them about, are you hiring? When are you hiring? How many people are you hiring? And they're also talking, you know, they're talking to them more about timing and tactical issues and really how, you know, what are you happy with about these students? Not just about their skills, but also about, you know, some of these other things that we were just talking about how people envision themselves, and so what does that mean in terms of how they behave and those kinds of things. So they really play very complementary roles in terms of how they engage with their employer community, which has been very interesting for us to see and really actually one of the surprises that came out of this.
Well, let's talk about other surprises, perhaps, which are the outcomes. What have you found in this program, other programs, in terms of the outcomes for the students?
Well, thanks for asking that, because when I was listening to Sharon talk, I thought, oh, Sharon's being so modest, because her outcomes are amazing, and particularly giving, so we've been following them for the last 3 years, but this has not been an easy time for people whose job it is to put people into jobs, right? Most people have been losing jobs. So it's incredibly impressive to look at their outcomes in particular. And we could see it so clearly in the data. You know, 2008, the economy went so bad, and you know, they were placing at a fairly high level, took a little dip, and then they worked it right back up again, which was really quite remarkable. They have a very high completion rate out of Training Futures. It's around 95%. It's remarkable. But also that job placement rate, which, you know, originally was, I would say, about 80 to 90.
She's so quiet.
I know.
85%.
I know. She doesn't just shout that.
Whoa.
You know, within sort of that first 3-4 months after completing the program. And then, as I said, you know, maybe it dipped down to like 70%, and then right back.
Over time?
No, in that initial, when the economy went really bad, it kind of went down a little bit, that cycle, and then they bring it back up again. So really, you know, in this program in particular, we've seen great outcomes, but I would say in a variety of these programs, we've seen really terrific outcomes, really terrific wage gains. One of the things about our data study, of course, is that we really worked with the programs to say, you know, we want to build on your data systems, help you make them better, help you think about how you bring together your system with the college system, and, you know, and really be able to learn from what you're seeing in your data, as well as, you know, show other people. So we've spent a lot of time going into way more detail about data than you would ever want to know.
Never.
But I think, you know, so one of the challenges, of course, has been, you know, how much can we see pre-employment to post-employment changes. In Sharon's site, we can see wage gains. In all of the sites, we couldn't necessarily pull that data. I mean, I think there's a lot of policy issues around how we think about using data, both in terms of not just sort of judging programs and things, but in terms of engaging the leaders of programs, of how they can learn how to do their work better. I have been nothing but impressed with our sites in terms of their willingness to, you know, sit with us through the excruciating dive into the nuts and bolts of the data, but to really think hard about what is this telling us about what we're doing well and what we could do better. And so that has been incredibly heartening, and I would love to see more people who are using data think about how to get that kind of value out of it, because I think that's where we really get to our systemic improvements.
Well, those listening into this Spotlight show might well find the easy listening version of the data so far a big tease and really want to dig in. So what would you both recommend, let's start with you, Maureen, as first steps for those listening out there thinking, God, I got to start one of these partnerships. This is rocking. You know, what would you recommend as some first steps? And then I'd love to hear Sharon's reaction.
First steps in establishing a partnership?
Exactly.
So I think for first steps in establishing a partnership, you probably, you know, I actually think you would start a little bit with data, right? Because you want a little bit of what are we going to agree is something we're going to see, right? And so that you can,
as an outcome,
right? And then you can both say how you're going to work towards that outcome. So I think that that's one thing. And I think another thing is just to be, you know, just to think about how much am I ready to change what I'm doing now, right? So don't start with everything. Start with the thing that you can do together, maybe small, and then build it out. I think, you know, in your relationship, it's taken some time, right? We start with this informal, and then we develop. They didn't always have this formal credit articulation agreement. They didn't always earn as many credits as they earn now. These are things that are built over time. So I think, you know, you want to think about what are the things that are sort of right here in front of us that we can do, and then how do we build from there?